Have you ever found yourself just staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the house is completely quiet and your brain just decides to drop the heaviest question imaginable right into your lap.
Right.
And it's not about, your to-do list for the next day, and it's not about whether you left the oven on. It is that universal midnight crisis question. What am I truly meant to do?
It's a heavy one
Yeah.
because it transcends job titles.
Mm.
It transcends your current salary or, whatever you happen to study in college.
Hmm.
The sheer weight of that question comes from the fact that it cuts straight to the core of your identity
Exactly.
and really the specific flavor of value you are supposed to be offering the world. When you're lying there in the dark, you aren't agonizing over a missed KPI. You're agonizing over alignment.
So true. Well, welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you, the listener, because today our mission is to move far past the surface level metrics, the resume bullet points, the LinkedIn headlines, the annual performance reviews, and uncover something foundational.
We are going straight to the heart of your purpose.
Right. Now, to do this, we are drawing from a very comprehensive guide detailing a framework called Purpose DNA. And I want to mention right at the top, because this is the key to everything we are about to unpack. The Purpose DNA quiz and the entire framework we are exploring today are available at Business Game Changer Magazine. That's businessgamechangermagazine.biz and Kizzy Magazine at kizzy.biz.
Having those resources available is, frankly, vital right now. Because the landscape of how we work, how we define our value, and how we justify our economic existence is just shifting completely under our feet.
It really is.
We're moving from an era where your value is defined by what you knew to an era where your value is defined by how you inherently operate.
Okay, let's unpack this because the
Okay.
context here, the why now of it all, is the backdrop for this entire conversation. Let's look at the old career model versus the new economy.
Yeah, let's do that.
If we think about the 20th century career path, it was essentially, well, an industrial pipeline. You go to school, you pick a major, you get your credentials, and you step onto a ladder in a nice, stable industry.
Right. The system itself provided your direction.
Exactly. You didn't necessarily have to agonize over your unique internal wiring because the structure of being an accountant or a lawyer or a middle manager, it dictated your days. The friction of figuring out how to work was just removed by the corporate hierarchy.
The structure was the compass, and compliance was the primary currency. But look at the macroeconomic and technological shifts we are living through right now. We're in the middle of a massive cognitive offload.
Cognitive offloading, right.
Artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms are completely reshaping what work even means. The source material highlights some really striking examples of this. Legal research that used to take teams of paralegals weeks of sifting through thousands of pages of case law that's now being done by algorithms in minutes.
It's wild to think about.
It is. Medical imaging analysis, which was once the exclusive domain of highly specialized radiologists who trained for, what, a decade?
At least a decade, yeah.
That is now being actively assisted and, in some diagnostic areas, actually driven by AI. We are seeing the same massive shifts in financial modeling, data analysis, customer service, and even complex coding. The old model of learn a technical task, execute it repeatedly for 40 years without deviation is fundamentally broken.
When you look at it that way, the anxiety people feel is completely justified. I mean, if algorithms can handle the heavy lifting of routine cognitive tasks, the immediate fear is obsolescence.
The anxiety is natural, sure, but the so what of this technological shift is actually deeply empowering. Human value is not disappearing, it is being distilled.
Distilled, I like that.
It is shifting aggressively away from the execution of routine technical tasks and toward distinctly human capabilities. We're talking about the kind of complex synthesis, deep empathy, strategic foresight, and original creativity that algorithms just cannot replicate.
So it's about leaning into what makes us human.
Precisely. Therefore, understanding your natural wiring, how you instinctively approach problems and create value, it isn't a luxury anymore. It's not a fun personality quiz you take to kill time. It is your primary competitive advantage. It is the core of your resilience. If the machine handles the process, you have to be the one providing the purpose and the direction.
I love that framing. The machine handles the process, you provide the direction. So let's get into the mechanics of this framework. What exactly is Purpose DNA? I want to draw a hard line here because we are not talking about a traditional personality test.
No, not at all.
We are not trying to figure out if you are an introvert or an extrovert. We aren't doing a skills assessment to see if you are a master at Python or public speaking. It doesn't care about your credentials. Purpose DNA is fundamentally about your operating system. It's about how you instinctively think, how you process reality, and how you naturally organize chaos into contribution.
The term DNA is used very deliberately in the source material. Biological DNA is the foundational blueprint, right? It dictates the architecture of the organism. Now, we know from epigenetics that DNA does not dictate a rigid, unchangeable destiny.
Right, environment plays a role.
Exactly. Your environment, your experiences, your stress levels, your choices, they all influence how those genes are expressed. But the underlying code remains. Purpose DNA applies that concept to human cognitive and behavioral contribution. You carry within you a unique internal blueprint. It's a set of natural tendencies, instinctive preferences, and ingrained patterns of thinking that shape how you approach every single challenge.
It's almost like a plant. Right. A plant grows best in the right soil. You can't force a cactus to thrive in a swamp. Similarly, humans just flourish when their work aligns with their natural wiring. When we talk about operating within that blueprint, we're really talking about the neurobiology of flow states, aren't we?
Yes.
It's the difference between doing work that energizes you and doing work that actively depletes your executive function.
You hit the nail on the head. When you are forced to operate outside of your purpose DNA for extended periods, it requires immense cognitive overhead. You are constantly overriding your natural instincts to conform to the demands of the role.
Which is exhausting.
It burns through glucose.
Yeah.
It depletes your executive function rapidly, leading to the kind of profound burnout that a weekend of sleep just can't fix. Conversely, when you operate within your primary archetype, you enter flow states much more easily. You learn faster, your pattern recognition is sharper, and you are significantly more resilient to setbacks because the work itself is intrinsically rewarding to your nervous system.
You are operating from a position of natural strength rather than sheer exhausting effort. So let's identify these patterns. Let's do a comprehensive deep dive into the 5 core archetypes of the Purpose DNA framework. And as we go through these, I want you, the listener, to really interrogate your own history.
Think about your past roles.
Yeah, think about the projects that made time fly and the roles that made you want to pull your hair out. See if you recognize your own reflection here. Let's start with archetype 1, the builder.
The implementers.
The core identity of the builder is defined by a relentless bias toward action, execution, and tangible results. These are the people who take abstract, floating concepts and wrestle them down into reality. When you drop a builder into a chaotic situation, they don't form a committee to discuss the philosophical implications of the chaos.
Right, they'd hate that.
They immediately start sorting, organizing, and executing. They break the problem down into a checklist and figure out the first 3 physical steps to make progress. Momentum is their oxygen.
That bias toward action is absolutely their defining mechanism. They have an exceptionally low tolerance for stagnation. Where you see them naturally thrive is in roles that demand and reward tangible, measurable outcomes. Think about complex operations management, product development, or project leadership.
People getting things done.
Exactly. You see builders dominating fields like construction, logistics, and real estate. At the end of the day, a builder needs to be able to point to something physical or a metric that has demonstrably moved and say, I made that happen today. If they spend 8 hours in theoretical strategy meetings with nothing to show for it, they go home feeling incredibly drained and anxious.
And when a builder decides to step into the entrepreneurial arena, their approach is distinctly pragmatic. They aren't usually the ones trying to invent a brand new, unproven category of software.
No, they want proven demand.
Right. They are the ones who look at an existing market, spot a gaping logistical hole or a massive inefficiency, and instantly start figuring out the mechanics of how to fill it faster and cheaper.
Builder entrepreneurs are the backbone of the economy. They excel at the unglamorous operational challenges that absolutely break other founders. While other archetypes are agonizing over the perfect logo or the theoretical user journey, the builder has already negotiated a lease for a warehouse, hired the first 5 employees, and set up a rudimentary but functional supply chain.
They don't wait for perfect.
Never. They build incredibly robust operational foundations because they respect the mechanics of execution.
So if their superpower is sheer velocity and execution, where do they stumble? What happens when that momentum goes unchecked?
What's fascinating here is how the builder's greatest strength is the exact mechanism of their shadow side. Because their internal reward system is so heavily tied to doing, they frequently overemphasize execution at the direct expense of reflection and strategy. A builder will rush into executing a project before the underlying assumptions have been stress tested.
Oh, I've seen that happen.
The classic metaphor is that the builder will construct a ladder incredibly fast, climb to the very top in record time, only to realize the ladder is leaning against the entirely wrong wall.
They successfully executed a flawed strategy.
Exactly. And because they move so fast, they can sometimes create collateral damage in their teams. They struggle to slow down and communicate the why behind their actions. Furthermore, they often fundamentally misunderstand the value of the other archetypes.
How so?
Well, a builder looking at someone who is deep in thought, brainstorming, or researching will often categorize that behavior as wasting time or lacking productivity. They mistake physical stillness for a lack of contribution, which can make them highly impatient managers if they aren't self-aware.
It's the classic clash where the builder manager walks by an employee's desk, sees them staring at a whiteboard, and assumes they are slacking off. It's a complete misinterpretation of how value is generated.
It causes so much unnecessary friction.
Which brings us perfectly to the exact opposite end of that spectrum, the people who live almost entirely in the realm of the whiteboard. Archetype 2. The creator.
The visionaries.
Here we are moving into the domain of imagination, originality, and profound aesthetic sensibility. Creators feel a deep, compulsive, almost biological urge to bring entirely new concepts, designs, or narratives into the world. It's not just a job for them, it is how they metabolize their experiences.
It's air to them.
Right. They are the ones who stare at the blank canvas and feel exhilarated, whereas the builder might look at a blank canvas and feel paralyzed without a set of instructions.
Creators are fundamentally drawn to open-ended questions and the exploration of the novel.
Their energy is entirely defined by generation and authentic expression. They are the perfect counterweight to the builder's pure execution. Traditionally, society has pigeonholed creators into the fine arts, painters, novelists, musicians. But in the modern digital economy, their domain has expanded exponentially and become incredibly lucrative.
Oh, massively.
We are seeing creators thrive on platforms like YouTube, Substack, TikTok, and Instagram, where original thought is immediately rewarded by the market. But it's also highly relevant in the corporate ecosystem. Yeah, it's the product designer who obsesses over the micro interactions of an app so that the user interface feels completely intuitive, almost like magic. Or the marketing director who ignores the standard playbook of running generic ads and instead crafts a breakthrough, emotionally resonant brand narrative that completely redefines how the public views the company. That is pure creator energy being applied to commerce.
And when a creator decides to build their own business, the DNA of the company looks radically different from the builder's logistics company. Creator entrepreneurs build heavily stylized, deeply distinctive businesses. Think of boutique design studios, niche media empires, high-end fashion labels, or specialized culinary ventures.
It's all about the vibe, the aesthetic.
For the creator founder, the product is never just a commodity meant to solve a basic problem. The product is an extension of their personal aesthetic, their philosophy, and their worldview. Everything from the packaging to the customer service emails must reflect that cohesive vision.
But I imagine the friction point comes when the canvas isn't blank anymore, when the vision is set, and now there are just 1,000 mundane tasks required to maintain the business.
That is the core of their shadow side. The contrast with the builder is incredibly stark here. Creators can struggle immensely, sometimes to the point of total paralysis, with the mundane, repetitive tasks required to actually follow through, scale, and maintain a project. A creator might have 50 brilliant, paradigm-shifting ideas sitting in various states of incompletion on their hard drive.
Just gathering digital dust.
Exactly. But the specific type of energy required to push those ideas across the finish line, the formatting, the quality assurance, the endless iterative tweaks actively drains their life force.
And there is a deep vulnerability to this archetype, too. Because their work is generated from their internal landscape, the separation between the work and the self is very thin.
It is razor thin. Consequently, creators can be highly, sometimes destructively, sensitive to criticism. When you critique a builder's logistical plan, the builder looks at the data, acknowledges the flaw, and fixes the spreadsheet. It's objective.
It's just business.
Right. But when you critique a creator's design, their writing, or their vision, it often registers in their nervous system as a profound personal rejection. Learning to detach their self-worth from the critical reception of their output is the lifelong developmental hurdle for the creator archetype.
It is a massive hurdle. Now, if creators are hyper-focused on the originality of the output, there is a third archetype that is hyper-focused on the actual human beings producing that output. Let's look at archetype 3, the guide.
The empathic core of any organization.
The core identity of the guide is centered entirely around empathy, mentorship, empowerment, and human development. Guides are the rare individuals who derive their absolute deepest professional and personal satisfaction not from standing on the podium themselves, but from witnessing the breakthroughs, the growth, and the success of others.
They're the ultimate multipliers.
They really are. They are gifted, active listeners. They have an almost radar-like ability to read the emotional undercurrents of a room and know exactly how to create a psychologically safe space for someone else to untangle their thoughts and find their own solutions.
Naturally, you find guides thriving in fields explicitly designed for human development education, executive coaching, counseling, social work, and organizational training. But their value in high-pressure, cutthroat corporate environments cannot be overstated. In a company obsessed with metrics and output, the guide is usually the vital glue holding the entire culture together.
Without them, things just fracture.
They do. They are the managers who actually take the time to understand the personal struggles, the career aspirations, and the unique neurodiversity of their team members. They build cultures of deep, unbreakable trust, rather than just extracting performance like a machine.
And if we look at the entrepreneurial landscape right now, the boom in guide-led businesses is staggering. The entire knowledge economy is essentially built for them.
The shift toward decentralized learning and personal development has created a golden age for the guide entrepreneur. We are talking about the explosion of online courses, specialized coaching platforms, membership communities, and therapeutic consulting services. What makes a guide so incredibly successful in the business world is their ability to generate fierce, organic community loyalty.
Because people feel truly seen by them.
Exactly. Their clients, their students, their users, they all intuitively know that the guide genuinely cares about their personal outcomes. That level of authentic investment creates a brand moat that a competitor with 10 times the marketing budget simply cannot breach.
But the toll that takes has to be immense. If you are constantly absorbing the emotional weight of your team, your clients, and your community, the shadow side must revolve around depletion.
It does. The shadow side of the guide is almost entirely defined by severe boundary issues. Because their innate impulse to nurture and help is so deeply ingrained, they are highly susceptible to overextending themselves. They will consistently prioritize the needs, the crises, and the development of others over their own rest, their own strategic work, and their own growth. This leads directly to chronic burnout.
How does that manifest when they are running a business or leading a division?
In a business context, this manifests as a notorious tendency to undercharge for their services. They feel guilty putting a high price tag on something that feels like helping.
Ah, that makes so much sense.
If they're in a corporate leadership position, their shadow side appears as an inability to engage in necessary conflict. A guide will often hesitate for months to make tough, unpopular decisions, or they will avoid having critical performance conversations with underperforming employees, simply because they cannot bear to cause emotional distress. They will sometimes let a toxic employee drag down the entire team because they are desperately trying to save or rehabilitate that one person.
Wow. They will sink the ship trying to save the one person who is drilling holes in the hull. It's a tragic paradox.
It really is.
Now, that emotional fatigue is real, but what if your primary drive is an emotional connection, but rather intellectual conquest? Here's where it gets really interesting. Archetype 4, the explorer.
The deep divers.
The core identity of the explorer is the intellectual adventurer. They are driven by an insatiable, restless, and deeply profound curiosity. They don't just want to know that something works, they need to know how it works at the subatomic level.
The mechanics of it all.
Yes, they love plunging into the unknown, and they possess this incredibly unique cognitive ability to see patterns and connections across seemingly completely unrelated disciplines. For the explorer, learning isn't a means to an end. It isn't about getting a certification to get a promotion. The acquisition of knowledge is the entire point of their existence.
They are the ultimate cross-pollinators of the human ecosystem. You will invariably find explorers thriving in environments that demand rigorous inquiry. They are the foundation of academic research, deep investigative journalism, theoretical science, and the absolute bleeding edge of technology. The people pushing the boundaries of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and quantum computing are heavily weighted toward the explorer archetype.
The pioneers.
Yes, they are the ones standing at the frontiers of human knowledge, looking into the darkness and asking, what if?
And in the modern media landscape, they have carved out a massive niche. Explorers are the deep dive podcasters who will spend 4 hours unpacking the history of the Byzantine Empire. They are the investigative YouTubers who spend 8 months researching a single documentary. They are the writers who seamlessly synthesize evolutionary biology, behavioral economics, and ancient philosophy into one cohesive essay.
When an explorer decides to build a business, they leverage that incredible depth. Explorer entrepreneurs frequently build high-end innovation consultancies, niche media empires, or deep tech startups. Because their entire foundation is built on rigorous research, empirical data, and genuine discovery, they carry immense, unassailable credibility in their field. They aren't selling surface-level trends or quick fixes. They are selling profound, structural insights.
But the commercialization gap has to be their shadow side, right? If your brain is wired to constantly seek out the next fascinating question, how do you ever stop researching long enough to build a product?
That is the exact trap. Their greatest struggle is execution, commitment, and commercialization. When absolutely everything in the universe is a fascinating rabbit hole, choosing just one single path and sticking to it for 5 years to build a company, it feels like a death sentence.
Like they're being locked in a cage.
Exactly. It feels like cutting off all other intellectual options. Explorers can get permanently stuck in the research, preparation, and data gathering phase. They might uncover incredible world-changing insights, but entirely lack the builder's logistical drive to translate those insights into accessible, market-ready products. They are always distracted by the next shiny intellectual object on the horizon.
It's the ultimate analysis paralysis. They have the cure for a disease, but they're too busy researching a second disease to mass produce the first cure.
Precisely.
So who actually takes those scattered, brilliant insights from the explorer, the wild aesthetic visions from the creator, and turns them into a structure that the builder can actually execute? That brings us to our final archetype, archetype 5, the architect.
The systems thinkers.
The core identity of the architect is the strategic mastermind, the systems designer. If the other archetypes are playing checkers, the architect is playing four-dimensional chess. They perceive the world natively through the lens of complex systems. They understand how all the individual moving pieces of an organization, a software program, or an economy interact with one another, and they automatically plan several moves ahead. They are never satisfied with a quick fix or a band-aid solution. They are driven by a need for elegant, scalable, robust solutions that will withstand the test of time.
Elegance and scalability are the watchwords for the architect. They despise inefficiency. They thrive in environments that require massive structural oversight, corporate strategy, management consulting, complex software architecture, organizational design, and urban planning.
The big picture stuff.
They are the rare individual who can walk into a massive, chaotic, failing multinational company, dispassionately identify the hidden structural flaws in the underlying business model, and prescribe a systemic redesign that unlocks entirely new levels of performance and profitability.
And what does it look like when the architect founds a startup? I imagine it's a very different first 100 days compared to the builder.
Oh, it is night and day. Architect founders are remarkable because they are deeply obsessed with the boring, highly complex, but essential structural elements long before they ever launch a public-facing product. They are running Monte Carlo simulations on their unit economics. They are stress testing their supply chain dependencies.
Future-proofing from day one.
Exactly. They are designing highly scalable back-end server infrastructure for 1 million users when they currently have 0. While the builder founder is out there frantically hand-selling a buggy prototype that barely exists, the architect is quietly in the background, engineering a business designed to run flawlessly for decades without breaking down under the weight of its own scale.
But doing the brutal math and designing the perfect system takes time. It sounds like they could get trapped in the blueprint phase forever.
Precisely. The primary shadow side for the architect is the phenomenon of over-engineering. Because they are driven by a desire for a flawless, comprehensive system, they can delay actual implementation indefinitely. They will spend 2 years tweaking the theoretical blueprint of a product, only to finally launch it and discover the market needs have completely changed.
And there is a human element to their shadow side as well, isn't there? Systems are logical, people are, well, not
That is the ultimate friction point for the architect.
Yeah.
Because they view the world through a highly rational, systems-based lens, they often deeply struggle with the messy, irrational, deeply emotional reality of human leadership. To an architect, a team is a system of inputs and outputs. When an employee is underperforming because they are going through a messy divorce, the architect's flowchart breaks down.
It doesn't compute for them.
Right. They often prefer the sterile clarity of a spreadsheet to the complex, nuanced emotional intelligence required to actually manage team dynamics. They come across as cold, detached, or overly critical.
Okay, so we have the builder executing, the creator imagining, the guide nurturing, the explorer investigating, and the architect structuring. Now, I want to take a step back and look at how these elements interact. Let's walk through a narrative scenario. Imagine you are an investor and you are evaluating a brand new tech startup. Let's say they are building a revolutionary new AI scheduling application. And by a complete quirk of the founder's hiring process, they have accidentally built a company comprised entirely of just one single archetype.
This is a vital thought experiment because the source material explicitly warns against the severe dangers of this kind of cognitive homogeneity. When everyone thinks exactly the same way, the blind spots are massive and company ending.
Let's play it out. Let's look at the startup made entirely of builders. Day 1 to day 90, what happens?
A startup composed purely of builders will have an explosive first 90 days. The sheer volume of output will be staggering. They will incorporate the company in a day, build a minimum viable product in a week, and immediately start aggressive outbound sales. They will hit every deadline and stay completely under budget.
Sounds great on paper.
But because they completely lack the explorer's foresight to analyze market trends, the creator's originality to design an interface people actually want to use, and the architect's strategy to ensure the unit economics make sense, they are highly likely to flawlessly execute a launch for a product that is entirely derivative, deeply unprofitable, and structurally unsound. They will efficiently build a bridge to nowhere.
They will sprint full speed right off a cliff. Okay, what about the exact opposite? The startup comprised entirely of creators.
The creator startup will have the most inspiring, energetic, visually stunning whiteboard sessions and pitch decks in the history of Silicon Valley. The branding will be breathtaking. The theoretical user experience will be a work of art. They will generate feature ideas that could genuinely revolutionize how humans interact with time. But without a builder to enforce a rigid timeline, or an architect to design the actual database infrastructure, those ideas will likely never leave the Figma file. They will constantly pivot from brilliant concept to brilliant concept, infinitely redesigning the logo without ever writing the code or shipping a finished product to the public.
It's a beautiful museum of things that don't exist. Let's look at the all-architect startup.
The architect startup will spend the first year building the most beautiful, elegant, flawless, highly scalable strategic models and back-end infrastructure imaginable. They will have a 200-page operational manual before they have a single customer.
But no one's knocking on the door.
Right. Without the builder's messy, aggressive willingness to just pick up the phone and sell a flawed product, or the guide's ability to actually inspire the human employees to work through the late nights, it remains a mathematically perfect theory sitting on a server. It lacks the kinetic energy to enter the market.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this fundamentally rewrites the playbook on strategic team design and organizational psychology. It completely changes how a manager, a founder, or an HR director should look at hiring and conflict resolution.
It changes the entire paradigm. When leadership truly understands PurposeDNA, the hiring process stops being exclusively about who has the right Ivy League degree or the most years of experience and becomes an exercise in cognitive chemistry. The question becomes, what natural metabolic energy is this team completely missing? If your marketing team is incredible at ideating massive campaigns but constantly misses their launch deadlines, you do not need to hire another visionary creative director. You need to hire a builder who will bring ruthless execution and logistics to the team.
It also provides a completely different lens for workplace conflict.
Precisely. Let's say you have a builder who is constantly frustrated with a creator for being too slow and indecisive. And the creator is equally frustrated with the builder for being rigid, aggressive, and lacking vision. In a standard corporate environment, this escalates into a personal conflict. HR gets involved.
It becomes a personality clash.
But when you overlay the PurposeDNA framework, both individuals realize that these aren't personality flaws or personal attacks. They're interacting with entirely different, completely necessary operating systems. The builder needs the creator's vision, so they have something worth building. The creator needs the builder's logistics so their vision actually becomes reality. The goal isn't to force the creator to act like a builder. The goal is to systematically seek out collaborators who fill your natural cognitive gaps. That is how you multiply organizational effectiveness.
It depersonalizes the friction. It's not Susan is intentionally trying to sabotage my timeline. It's Susan is an architect. She is seeing a structural flaw in my timeline that I missed, and we are simply speaking two different cognitive languages right now.
Exactly. It creates empathy through understanding.
But this framework is far too fundamental to just clock out at 5 p.m. I want to take Purpose DNA beyond the workplace. Because if this is your underlying operating system, it has to dictate how you navigate your personal life. How do these archetypes manifest in our romantic relationships, our parenting, our friendships? Because how we are naturally wired to create value absolutely dictates how we communicate love and connection.
It dictates it profoundly, and it is the source of so much unnecessary relational friction when it isn't understood. Let's look at the builder in a romantic relationship. A builder operates on tangible reality. Therefore, they often show love through acts of service and utility. They are the partner who, when you come home exhausted and say you were overwhelmed, immediately starts doing the laundry, organizing the finances, and fixing the squeaky door. They show their devotion by optimizing your life.
Which is great, but
But if their partner is a guide or a creator, that partner might just desperately need them to sit still on the couch, hold their hand, and emotionally validate their stress. The builder finds sitting still to be an agonizingly inefficient way to solve the problem of stress.
so the partner feels unheard, and the builder feels unappreciated for doing all the chores. What about the creator in a relationship?
The creator brings immense spontaneity, emotional depth, and magic to a relationship. They are the ones planning the incredibly thoughtful, highly personalized anniversary trips. But because they expend so much of their internal psychological energy on their creations, they often require massive amounts of absolute solitude and unstructured time to recharge their batteries.
They need to disappear for a bit.
Right. A partner who doesn't understand this dynamic might feel shut out, rejected, or ignored when the creator retreats into their own world. In reality, the creator isn't rejecting their partner, they're simply retreating to their cave to refill the well of their identity.
That is a crucial distinction. What about guides? This one seems somewhat obvious, but perhaps inherently tragic in a relationship dynamic.
Guides are incredibly nurturing, fiercely loyal, empathetic partners and parents. They're always hyper-tuned in to their partner's or children's emotional state. They create incredibly warm homes. But their professional shadow side follows them right through the front door.
The boundary issues.
Yes. Because they are so deeply conditioned to being the strong, supportive pillar, the therapist, and the caregiver for everyone else, they struggle immensely with vulnerability. They often find it physically uncomfortable to ask for help or to simply allow themselves to receive care from their partner. They can end up feeling deeply lonely even in a loving relationship because they never let their partner see their own cracks.
And beyond relationships, this framework fundamentally alters how we should approach personal growth and the acquisition of new skills. The source material breaks down specific learning styles by archetype, which is an absolute game changer for anyone trying to pivot careers or learn a complex new discipline.
It really is. The traditional educational model assumes everyone learns the same way, by sitting quietly, reading a textbook, and taking a test. But if you align your learning methodology with your purpose DNA, your attention skyrockets. If you are a builder trying to learn a new software program, do not read the 300-page manual. You will lose your mind. You need to learn by doing. Jump straight into the software, start pushing buttons, break things, iterate, and get immediate tangible feedback from the real world.
And if you're a creator,
If you are a creator, you learn through open-ended experimentation and aesthetic play. You need to tie the new skill to a creative project you are passionate about.
and guides.
Guides learn best in community. They need social learning. If a guide wants to learn a new language, an isolating app won't work long term. They need a conversation partner, a study group, or a mentor to connect the learning to a human relationship.
That makes total sense. And explorers.
Explorers, conversely, love the textbook. They want to study, research, follow the footnotes down the rabbit hole, and understand the historical context of the skill they are acquiring.
They want the deep dive.
Exactly. And architects learn through structural frameworks. If you try to teach an architect a specific coding language by just showing them random snippets of code, they will be deeply frustrated. You have to first explain the underlying architecture of the language, the logic of the system, and the rules of the environment. Once they understand the container, they will master the details with terrifying speed.
Knowing this about yourself is the ultimate definition of living intentionally. It's about identifying your center of gravity. And I want to make a vital clarification here for everyone listening. Finding your center of gravity does not mean you are permanently locked in a box. It doesn't mean a builder can never have a creative thought or an explorer can never finish a project.
Not at all.
Actually, understanding your baseline frees you to explore with much greater confidence. If you know unequivocally that your home is being an architect, you can venture out and act as a builder for a massive 6-month project, fully knowing that it will exhaust you, but knowing you can eventually return to your natural strategic state to recover.
Exactly. It provides an anchor point for your identity. You aren't drifting aimlessly, wondering why certain jobs leave you hollow while others energize you. You are making deliberate, strategic choices about which environments, which partnerships, and which challenges will allow your natural neurobiology to flourish.
So practically speaking, let's get into the mechanics. How do we actually figure this out with empirical certainty? We spent a lot of time discussing the theoretical behavior of these archetypes, but what are the actual mechanics of the Purpose DNA quiz? Because as we mentioned earlier, it is not asking you generic, easily gameable questions.
The problem with most self-assessments is that the test taker can clearly see the underlying matrix. If a quiz asks, do you prefer painting a picture or analyzing a spreadsheet? Well, you know exactly what the outcome will be. People inherently game those answers to get the result that aligns with who they want to be or who they think their boss needs them to be, rather than who they actually are.
It becomes aspirational instead of accurate.
Right. The Purpose DNA quiz circumvents that bias by taking a much more subtle behavioral approach. It takes only a few minutes, but it is designed to probe deeper physiological and psychological responses to environmental stimuli.
It focuses heavily on the concept of flow states and cognitive drag, right? Asks things like, what specific types of activities make time completely disappear for you?
Yes, tracking your flow state is the most accurate indicator of your natural alignment. The quiz attempts to isolate the specific cognitive verbs that energize you. But equally important, it probes your aversions. It asks what specific tasks drain your battery so rapidly that a 1-hour meeting feels like a grueling week. It also looks at your instinctive, unprompted role when you are dropped into a vacuum.
Give you an example of that.
For example, if you are put into a room with 5 strangers and given a complex, ambiguous problem, what is your first move? Do you immediately start organizing the people? Do you ask a barrage of clarifying questions? Do you retreat to a whiteboard to draw a system? Do you try to ensure everyone feels comfortable? By analyzing these subtle reflexive behavioral patterns, the algorithm generates a profile that points accurately to your dominant archetype.
Now, a question I know people listening are screaming at their speakers right now. Can you be multiple archetypes? Because I'm sitting here analyzing my own life and I'm thinking, I definitely have the relentless aesthetic drive of a creator, but I also deeply love the obsessive footnote-chasing deep dive of the explorer.
It is entirely normal and actually highly advantageous to relate to multiple archetypes. Human beings are complex systems. Most people possess a primary dominant archetype that is your core center of gravity, the place your brain returns to at rest. But they almost always have significant traits of a secondary, complementary archetype.
Like the creator-explorer combo.
Exactly. The example you just provided, a creator-explorer combination, is an incredibly potent cognitive profile. That is an individual who possesses the explorer's relentless drive to research deeply, uncover hidden truths, and understand complex data, combined with the creator's unique ability to synthesize and express those truths in original, aesthetically beautiful, and emotionally compelling ways. That is the profile of a world-class documentary filmmaker or a paradigm-shifting author.
What about the longevity of the profile? Can your primary archetype fundamentally change over time? If someone takes this quiz at 25 when they are a junior copywriter, will it be the exact same when they take it at 50 as a chief marketing officer?
The core of your purpose DNA, that underlying biological blueprint, tends to remain remarkably stable throughout your adult life because it is based on deep-seated neurobiological instincts. However, neuroplasticity is real, and you absolutely can and must develop secondary traits and competencies as you mature and take on new responsibilities.
You adapt to survive.
Right. For instance, a pure builder might spend the first 10 years of their career flawlessly executing tasks. But if they start their own company, they will eventually hit a ceiling. Out of sheer survival necessity, they will be forced to develop strong architect skills to scale their logistics and guide skills to manage their growing workforce. They learn the behaviors. But if you strip away the business and put them on a desert island, their core, what feels like true home to their brain, will still be the builder. The secondary skills are acquired tools. The primary archetype is the hand wielding the tool.
So once a listener takes the quiz and receives their profile, what is the actionable next step? Because we don't just want people putting this on their fridge like a horoscope.
The results should serve as the foundation for a deep, potentially uncomfortable professional audit. First, use it immediately for career alignment and boundary setting. If your profile clearly indicates you are an architect, and you are currently fielding a job offer for a role that requires you to be a rapid-fire, reactive builder with zero time allocated for deep strategy, you now possess the empirical language to understand exactly why that job will inevitably burn you out within 6 months, regardless of how lucrative the salary is. You can make an informed choice to walk away.
That saves years of misery.
It does. Second, use this framework to completely revolutionize your strengths-based communication, especially in high-stakes environments like job interviews, performance reviews, or investor pitches. Instead of giving the standard generic answers about being a hard worker or a team player, you can articulate with surgical precision exactly how your specific operating system creates unique value.
You stop apologizing for what you aren't and start amplifying what you are.
Precisely. And finally, use it for highly targeted personal development. If you know you are a brilliant creator, stop flagellating yourself for being terrible at maintaining complex financial spreadsheets. Instead of spending 100 hours trying to fix a weakness that will only ever become mediocre, actively build external systems or hire a builder or an architect to handle your operational follow-through. Free up your cognitive bandwidth so you can ruthlessly optimize your actual zone of genius.
That is an incredibly empowering shift in perspective. It moves the entire conversation from how do I fix my inherent flaws to how do I ruthlessly optimize my natural genius? As we begin to wrap up this incredibly expansive deep dive, I want to remind you one more time about where you can access this transformative mirror. You can take the Purpose DNA quiz right now to uncover exactly how you are wired to create impact at the URL https://www.businessgamechanger.bizquiz. And again, the entire comprehensive Purpose DNA framework we've discussed today is available at Business Game Changer Magazine, that is businessgamechangermagazine.biz, and Kizzy Magazine, kizzy.biz. I highly, highly recommend spending some time with those resources. So what does this all mean? When you zoom out and look at the trajectory of your life, in a world that is incredibly noisy, fundamentally distracted, and constantly trying to sell you a generic template of who you should be, clarity is your absolute most valuable resource. Finding your purpose, aligning with your DNA, isn't something that happens overnight in a sudden flash of cinematic lightning. It emerges gradually. It comes through deliberate reflection, through a deep, unflinching understanding of your own internal blueprint, and then crucially, having the profound courage to actually restructure your life, your career, and your relationships to align with that truth.
It is the defining journey of a professional life. And as we conclude our examination of this framework today, consider the broader societal implications of everything we have discussed. If we know, definitively, through neurobiology and organizational psychology, that human beings only truly thrive, innovate, and find profound fulfillment when their daily labor aligns with their natural cognitive wiring, what would happen if we fundamentally, radically redesigned our education systems from the ground up? Imagine if, from elementary school onwards, we stopped forcing every single child through the exact same industrialized, compliance-based rote memorization mold. Imagine if our educational infrastructure actively sought to identify, nurture, and accelerate these 5 distinct archetypes. How much staggering world-changing genius, how many visionary builders, paradigm-shifting creators, empathetic guides, brilliant explorers, and masterful architects are we currently leaving dormant on the table simply because their unique operating system doesn't fit the parameters of a standardized test?
That is a staggering, beautiful thought to end on. Imagine an economy, a society where everyone is empowered to operate in their zone of genius from day one. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today. Take the quiz, spend some serious time reflecting on your own unique wiring, and remember, the new economy does not need more people trying to fit into a standardized mold. It desperately needs you, operating exactly as you were designed to. Keep exploring.